racing isn't just about speed. And on a desert moon, 500 kilometers is a call to the strategists. Between the danger of pirates overhead, the fire from fellow racers nearby, or the deep canyon cliffs threatening your vehicle. Only a fraction of the 754 racers that set out on day one make it past nightfall. 8 years running, the Daymar Rally returns this year, bringing out 184 teams from 38 different countries to compete in a long-distance death race across the distant moon of Daymar. Created by Corsair and the team over at Atmo Esports to parallel the famous Dakar Rally, this race is the biggest event in Star Citizen, and it's entirely player-run. But with a huge prize pool on the line and a two-time champion looking for the three-peat this year, the competition was pretty fierce. And as always, I'm going to give you the tomato angle on the truck division, because this single version of this specific race is one of the best signs of this game's potential, which also makes it a great showcase of its weak spots. This is the Daymar Rally 2956. The good, the bad, and oh boy, the ugly. Thank you for coming to my Tomato Talk. The morning of the Daymar Rally was a disaster. Many of you may actually remember, January 24th, 7 a.m. PST. Everything was down. The website, the game, the launcher, all of it. There was actually no knowing whether the event was going to go on, and after months of planning, over 180 teams waiting nearby and thousands of viewers preparing, a delay would have been a disaster. But as I sat in the briefing room, Corsair and his team kept on with the procedure, kept people calm, and kept in touch with CIG. The casters were warming up, and all was ready to move forward on the expectation that CIG could pull through. And while they eventually did, and the game was back up, the ASOP system was hung as hundreds of ships were trying to spawn all at once around the Crusader system. Inventories were struggling, respawning was a pain, and the party system caused mayhem, which we'll get to later. It really felt like the bullet dodged earlier that morning was closely followed by yet another, as Star Citizen immediately all just kind of buckled. But eventually all the teams were able to get to the start line on the burning desert of Daymar after coordinating for an hour or so. Generally, each team that was racing had 3 to 5 members. A racer on the ground, weathering the elements, staying constantly focused on the path ahead, and making the final decisions on the path taken across the desert. A support ship overhead, with 1 or 2 people in it, calling out distant obstacles and landmarks to follow, resupplying the racer as needed, and even carrying spare vehicles. This year there was a new change to the race, and each team had a security pilot as well, tasked with defending against attackers from outside the race. I specify that because racers could actually open fire on one another, making for some pretty interesting mid-race conflicts. But as you'll see soon, it's the pirates and the griefers that cause the real problems. Security is a big topic surrounding the Daymar Rally and really all of Star Citizen, but it's one I discussed with the creators at length on my recent podcast with them. Every year, security does improve, and while it is disappointing to be attacked during the race, it is the spirit of the race that invites these things. See, the most unique thing about the Daymar Rally is that it is hosted in the open game space. Racers could stumble across a random shipwreck, diver, or miner out trying to make a living on the course. Pirates can drop in to try and steal some of that glory, and even spectators can camp out overnight to try and get a first-hand view of the race. It is a highly organized 500-kilometer plus endurance death race, and it is completely open to the rest of the 700-player instance. So keeping the place secure has been a struggle. Every year I've covered, there have been attacks, and while security pushes back, with the many systems Star Citizen is missing that makes these things manageable, it is a new fight every year. It's difficult to hail other pilots, there's minimal security provided by the game itself around infrastructure, and my favorite, friend and foe identification does not take into account reputation. So if you know a player is associated with other pirates they're standing right next to, and you shoot them, even if they don't have a crime stat, you now do. And if your fellow security buds aren't in your party in the Daymar Rally, they may accidentally shoot you. So things can get messy pretty quickly. In fact, back to the race, just as I was making my way to the start line, I had an unfortunate run-in with this security and the lack of party system. Since there was not one large party to show friend or foe at a glance, I was quickly shot down as an unidentified. And honestly, until Star Citizen figures out his party markers, this is just going to continue to be an issue. By the time I returned to the race, it unfortunately had already begun. Day 1 had kicked off, and the racers had already put some distance between them. The first segment of this race is interesting because it is immediately canyon after canyon for kilometers. While racers can swing a wide right to avoid them, that costs a lot of time. So immediately racers are faced with some decision making. And while many have practiced all year, some every day for months, the terrain still shifts a bit throughout the year in different updates, making things still a bit unpredictable and hard to plan for ahead of time. One thing that's notable in this race is just how much a subtle strategy can make a difference. Over the course of 500 kilometers and 5 hours of driving, the top racers like Shaq-Nu at XGR, Corsair at Ramp Rocks, and our own Leo Nim from the Garden Interstellar had to make little decisions to keep their speed up. Shaq-Nu particularly practiced every day for the last 40 days before the event to make sure each jump, rock, turn, and canyon was navigated efficiently. He had his eye on the would-be three-peaters at Ramp Rocks, and going fast was not always the winning strategy. And we're only talking about trucks here. On the very same moon, racing the very same course are a buggy and a hoverbike division, both finishing much faster and featuring hundreds of other racers all racing at the same time across 4 different instances competing from around the world. Like I said before, this year saw 184 teams consisting of 754 people representing 38 different countries in the race. There was a VR competitor this year, an all-female team for the first time, and plenty of other first-time racers in the rally. And as I said, Ramp Rocks was chasing that three-peat for the first time in Daymar Rally history. So it was a pretty exciting field. It's the most popular and wide-reaching event in Star Citizen, but it can also kind of bring out the worst in people. While some may have been focused on racing, some are trying to use what little weaponry they have to get an edge. And while this can make for some exciting exchanges and occasionally benefit the instigator, more than often it slows down both parties involved and makes room for a third racer to possibly slip in and take the lead. There were a couple exciting moments that I was able to catch exchanges like this, but almost always it ended negatively for the one who starts the fight. Other racers on the complete opposite side will often seek out less traveled paths to focus entirely on their racing. And from post-race interviews and shared strategies, it does sound like a focus on racing over combat is what will benefit you in the long run. Unfortunately, it was around this time in the race that I bumped lightly into another ship and lost my entire power plant, leading to me backspacing to get another ship. This actually happened twice during the race and took away a lot of my coverage. Now, I am a believer that if you are not dying, then you're not getting the best coverage, and that's what I go out to do. But light bumps and scrapes are not the kind of thing I expect to take me out of the race, and while I love the direction of engineering and racers are excited for it to be here, it still has so far to go before it works correctly. It's supposed to be a big part of the race, requiring maintenance, refueling, and heat control in your vehicles out in the hot sun. But none of that applies to a ground vehicle yet, and a lot of it is still just getting started with ships, which all keeps the event from reaching its full potential. Now in the meantime, it's just taken me out of the sky. Luckily, before dying, I did get some coverage of our racers arriving at their first checkpoint 92 kilometers into the race at Eager Flats. From there, racers turned due some direction and traveled around 400 plus kilometers past another checkpoint and to the finish. And I'll tell you right now, you really don't understand the scale of this game until you try to drive across an entire moon. By the time the first checkpoint was in play, racers were spread out across dozens of kilometers of desert. This became more obvious as night set in. The darkness on an unpopulated moon introduces new challenges for racers. Not only is the terrain difficult to see, but pirates are often lurking in low orbit, looking for the light of racers to attack. In addition, you're more visible to other racers. On the other hand, for those in the bike division, nighttime was a relief, as they're exposed to the sun during the day and lose hydration faster. But here in the trucks, things continue unaffected. And that didn't really change the fact that the majority of this race was about your ability to just pay attention. Between the rock fields, the canyons, the mountains, little sandworms, and the other racers, there was a lot to throw you off. And the fact that this moon was only about 30% the gravitational force of Earth, that actually made things much harder. It made very obvious how terrible the physics around ground vehicles still are, and made it extremely hard for players to drive in straight lines, or any kind of line. And while we're at it, you'll probably notice the rips and tears at some points in the footage you're watching, the very under-detailed vehicle wheels that look like they're transforming into Legos. In general, the level of details and ground rendering is looking pretty bad in-game at the moment. It is being worked on in R&D per the last monthly report, but it really took away from the beauty of this race at some points in my opinion. But it did not stop the racers from continuing on into day 2 with a massive spread between first and last place. It got hard for me to cover the whole race. Believe it or not, I found another opportunity to blow myself up, lightly tapping the ground in my second ship. And I gotta say, resetting my camera every time was starting to get exhausting. That said, I was able to return in time to catch first place crossing the second checkpoint. But while he was still half a click out, this happened. It's definitely a person on the ground. Oh! What? A player had managed to sneak on foot to the checkpoint with a boom tube and caused a good amount of confusion and chaos before a security team was able to subdue. It was a rare and eye-opening display of just how hard it can be to lock down thousands of square kilometers of open space for a race. And luckily the race was undisrupted, as first place cruised right on through a little bit later. Security had done their job. Quite poetic, considering one of the winning strategies was staying out of combat with other players. And like I said, combat with other players or even with attackers from above was not the greatest threat. Continuing on from checkpoint 2, racers had to deal with what felt like never-ending rock fields and a lot of hills and sand divots. With all that time spent off the ground, most racers found themselves getting turned around at the least opportune times. But this was nothing new. Star Citizen's ground physics are still pretty bad. Players wait and wait and wait for an update, but it just keeps getting pushed. Between that and the rendering issues mentioned earlier, there was always a reminder of the jank. And the battles raging overhead, the racers taken out of the race within the first hours, minutes, and even seconds, and general comms confusion leading to friendly deaths, it's clear Star Citizen is pushing events like this to their limits with the lack of proper party tools, comm systems, and friend or foe tools. CIG, send help. But that actually is not all. Remember I said the terrain across the race course changed throughout the year as the game got updated. In addition to that, mapping tools in the game have still left racers pretty clueless on the direction they're going on ground or unable to mark checkpoints to know where they're going, relying on analog navigation like setting paper sheets on the screen to understand the direction you're heading, and constant location reporting using third-party tools created by the community. It is still a mess for those involved, even if it does add to the challenge. There are clearly many things that a race like this exposes that need to be fixed. But despite all the difficulties, many racers finished the entire race. The last segment of this race, the 500 kilometers, was fairly spread out. By this point, most players had dropped out, and those who were still left over ranged across hundreds of kilometers. Racers slowly made their way into the finish line over the course of hours, navigating one last major mountain stretch that drove players either deep left around the hill and into a deep valley over some rough terrain, or shorter right, honestly still into some pretty rough terrain. Depending on your approach, either way could make sense, and some positions were decided by this last move, with one driver actually changing place with another in the maneuver, losing their spot in the race. Our very own Leo Nim from GII just said screw it and drove over the mountain in his mule, now known as the Mountain Goat. But at the end of the day, as racers finished, it was clear the winning strategy was focus, avoidance of combat, and the ability to maintain the same vehicle over a long period of time. This will obviously change as engineering starts to affect ground vehicles, and Planet Tech V5 makes Daymar an entirely different beast at some point. But currently it still calls for a winning strategy. This year, Ramp Rocks was denied a historic three-peat attempt at the Daymar Rally, upset by Shaqnu and XGR, who, like I said, practiced for 3 hours every day for the final month and a half beforehand with a winning time of 4 hours and 38 minutes raced. Practice pays off in an endurance race, and the winning team in each division walked away with a real trophy, some medals, a bomber jacket, the new Galleon keyboard from Elgato, and a multitude of ships. And second place and third both won some pretty nice rewards as well. All in all, a great showing from everybody involved, a good time for the most part, and another look at the biggest example of Star Citizen's events at the moment. I personally think there's a lot to learn from Star Citizen's still prevalent roadblocks to embracing the MMO feel. A lot of things still need updates here, and major initiatives like the Daymar Rally only make that more apparent, despite the entertainment and good times they provide. Despite all that, it's hard not to marvel at the novelty of being able to fly silently over a moon searching for wrecks to salvage or minerals to mine, while a death-defying desert rally takes place 300 kilometers below. Star Citizen offers some pretty unparalleled experiences that you still can't get anywhere else in gaming, but that beauty and novelty only goes so far when real problems continue to hold back the potential. I hope this gave you a good look at what Star Citizen has to offer in the large-scale, esports-focused player-run events category. The possibilities here are endless, and they really show just how great this environment could be. But I think you'll find that the Daymar Rally continues to stand out as such a massive event in this game, not just because they are willing to pursue such ambitions, but because they're some of the only ones willing to deal with everything that Star Citizen still does to work against you. If you'd like to stay updated on how progress is going towards this game treating you a little kinder, I'm going to cover it for you here every week on Space Tomato and every day over on Space Tomato 2, my second channel. Make sure to check out the Daymar Rally in the links down below if you want to participate next year or try out any of Atmo Esports' other events throughout the year. A special thanks to Corsair and Crucian for helping me out with this coverage and coming on the podcast, and a shout out to Dexter, the Garden Racing team, the security folks I met, and everybody else who participated at the Daymar Rally for being an active part of a pretty awesome community. And if you're interested in learning more about how I get these shots or set up my camera, I use the Tobii eye tracker for a lot of unique shots, and I'll leave the link down below for the review in the video for you if you want to check it out. You can get 5% from using my link and code TOMATO down below if you'd like to pick one up just to see how it works for you. And if you just want to support the channel and what we do here and make this kind of coverage possible, you can become a Patreon member down below and get early access to videos like this, as well as live access to our podcast, timed exclusive releases every month along with our last 6 months catalog, and more. Thank you so much for considering and for watching this video all the way until the end. This is a long one. I hope you learned something new in this one, and I'll catch you in the next.